Welcome to Dear Gear Episode 7, Part 2, featuring Tegan Quin, lead sister of Tegan and Sarah. Tegan and I discuss delicate exchanges, respect, magic, and the casino circuit. Hello.
It's Tegan.
Hello, Tegan. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy. It's very unlike me. It's very unlike me to be on be involved in anything where I have to talk about gear, because I'm kind of anti-gear, but it's exciting.
Yeah. So we'll go straight into this. I don't know if you spoke to your sister at all, but
Sarah and I never talk to each other.
Never at all. Yeah, sure.
No.
So anyhow, we had Sarah on last week, and it was super cute. Just having, going back to the whole gear thing, ultimately, I'm not a big fan of gear either. Obviously it's a heartache for a lot of people, especially for you and your sister at the level you're at. It's like, you probably want less instead of more.
Yeah.
So that it totally makes sense. And it did take me a little bit to tickle a story out of her, but I was able.
Oh, really? Jeez.
Oh, I've got all sorts of stuff for you. We'll see. Yeah. She said all sorts of bad things about you. She was like, well, let's see. What else can I pull out of my bag of tricks? Anyway.
Love it.
So we started talking about your Fisher-Price tape recorder days when you were younger. There were some stories about how there was a bit of a competitive nature between you and Sarah in regards to who might hold the microphone, who might be speaking, who might turn the recordings on and off. Then I think it also advanced into some boombox stories about you two recording Full House episodes. And then
Full House and Roseanne, and then we also loved Home Improvement and Garfield. I remember that too.
And so what were you guys doing with this? I mean, so you were recording it. Were you using it kind of like white noise to go to sleep until the next episode came out the next week?
Yeah, I think probably using it as white noise is the closest explanation for this eccentric behavior. I think, it was the 80s. And so probably, owning our own, tape recorder, boombox, and being able to, record these TV shows that we really liked. I mean, we were really diligent. We would pause it, for commercials, and then we would listen on headphones before bed. And, a lot of my early childhood memories are laying in bed and listening to music or listening to TV shows and, listening to the radio. I think we probably went to bed and then didn't go to sleep. You know what I mean? I think we probably just needed entertainment. And I think my parents didn't care what we were doing in there as long as the lights were off and we were in bed, So yeah, I think it was probably just white noise to fall asleep to. And we would listen to the same episodes over and over and over again. That's what I recollect. I don't recall anyone else doing it. I don't recall this being something that was popular, or I definitely don't think it was popular. I don't think it was a fad. It was not a fad.
Okay. Oh, goodness gracious. Like Slinky or something.
Yeah, it wasn't on par with some sort of cool 80s thing that was happening. I think we were a bit strange. I think it was eccentric, and I think it was probably just, I think you were dead on. I think it was probably just white noise to help us fall asleep.
So again, Sarah talked a little bit about the competitive nature of your storytelling as well.
Yeah.
And that that this kind of feeds into maybe some of the narratives that you guys shared today, where, maybe one of you might be telling a story and the other one just doesn't really recollect it, the exact same way. So do you feel like you guys riff like that when you're in the studio?
Yeah. I mean, I think what happens between us is a product of it is something that's very unique. Most of us don't go through our lives with another person with them all the time. I mean, even when we become adults and we have a partner that we marry or we shack up with or whatever, they go to their job, you go to your job. You know, a lot of your time is spent independent, but so much of Sarah and I's life has been spent together that there is this sort of witness to everything that's happened. And so I don't know if anyone remembers their stories that clearly or that factually, but you don't have that other annoying person being like, oh, that's not really what happened. Like, I think Sarah and I's banter comes purely from the fact that, like, we have this unusual situation where we've sort of monitored and been witness to each other's lives. And so there's discrepancies, but I think they're probably similar discrepancies that anyone would have if someone was watching. And I think, you know, initially as young musicians, I think that we used it as a way to fill time. You know, if Sarah broke a string, or if, you know, our set was going too quickly and we needed to kill time on stage, we just would talk to each other. We would tell stories, and then the banter kind of came naturally, where it was like, well, that's not what happened. Or, you know, under stress, maybe you'd exaggerate or you'd forget a detail, and then the other one would jump in and be like, no, it went like this. And you could see an audience of people that had been mildly entertained or even, you know, maybe just ignoring us would all of a sudden start listening to us. And I think that we understood the power of storytelling really young because we had a family of storytellers. So I think once we saw that that worked in that format and in that way, we started to use it. But I don't know that either one of us, like, I'm never, like, as an adult now, like, I've never sat if Sarah starts telling a story that I wanted to tell. I just look forward to the moment where I can interject and say, no, it didn't happen that way.
I think that's a sibling thing for sure. And I agree with you,
so
you know,
too.
in relationships, you know, cause I could think about, you know, I've been in a couple of long-term relationships, and it is, you've always got that annoying person who's, you know, like, I was there too. I didn't recollect it like that at all.
It's like,
but
it's your built-in fact checker.
Exactly. Yeah. I know some people that could use that right now. Actually, there's quite a few people in society that could use that. I think you guys are actually well ahead of the curve, and probably the rest of society.
We're probably more honest.
So,
we're more honest.
Yeah. I think so. And I think there's something also in my own thoughts that's very beautiful about that. But that's just on a side note.
I was going to say too that it's interesting that Sarah talked to you about the tape recorder and that you brought it up, because it's interesting because I think that we fought over the tape recorder, but not only to tell stories. I think we wanted to be in control, and I think that's what led us to wanting to record ourselves and to be songwriters. You know, even in a time where people would be like, oh well, like, you know, early on in our career it wasn't a strong push, and it wasn't a really strong narrative in the early part of our career, but there were certainly people who said, hey, if you write with other people or you consider working with producers who are songwriters, you could craft songs that are stronger quicker. And I think Sarah and I, we desired like a lot of creative time solo from one another, and we really wanted to learn how to do it. Like, I wanted to learn how to record myself. I wanted to be able to manipulate my songs, my guitar parts, my keyboard parts, my vocals. I wanted to be able to have control of it really early on. And I wonder, like, thinking back, I haven't thought about the Fisher-Price tape recorder in a long time, but I wonder if even then there was something about being in control of the story and being able to manipulate it by being the person in charge of the tape recorder was appealing to us. And then I think of how that links to that desire to sit in front of the television and record the show. I mean, we didn't just record it. We didn't just set it to record and leave it. We would sit there and painstakingly, like, pause it and then be there to unpause it when the commercial ended. And then we, painstakingly, like, curated which shows we would record. I mean, I think we've always wanted to be producers at, you know, sort of our work.
I think so. And your sister said almost the exact same thing. You know, I think, and yeah, but there's something great about that too, right? You know, I think especially for younger women who are in music, and especially I'm a bit older than you. So, you know, there was a time in music when it was just like, there weren't many of us out there. And, you know, I said the same thing to Sarah. You know, it was, especially women who are interested in production. And I still feel like should be more women producing. but it doesn't happen. So we do it ourselves. And I think I told your sister in the times that I've done it, I would use the word producer pretty loosely. But, mostly again, just wanting to have that control and be able to, I know what I want something to sound like. You know what you want something to sound like, and your sister knows, constantly, where I think we're surrounded by people who want to give you an idea about what they think you should be doing, even if you don't ask for an opinion. So.
Well, don't you also think that the definition of producer has changed so much or evolved?
God, yes. Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, ultimately, like I've produced artists, but like I didn't sit at the mixing board and press all the buttons. I wasn't the one touching the faders all the time, but I was like, I produced them. But that was what producing used to be, is that, Rick Rubin style, sitting there listening, curating which songs, choosing the sound, picking the musicians, being a part of crafting the whole thing. And now producer sort of means like understand the gear. And it's like, I don't know if this is actually gender related, because lots of men have no idea about the gear in a studio. But I think we've decided somewhere along the lines in the last couple of decades, we determined that our lack of interest, and when I say our, I mean Sarah and I, our lack of interest in gear meant that we weren't qualified to be producers. And I don't know where the heck that came from, because the more traditional old school way of looking at a producer was, you just had a love of the music. We're obviously more than capable of curating a record and producing ourselves, but I don't know. Yeah. Like I totally agree. I think it's there should be more women doing it. And I think a lot of women count themselves out. I mean, I've lost count of how many times we've turned down producing gigs because I'm like, ugh, I'm going to get in the studio and I'm not going to, it's exhausting enough for me to have to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Like how to speak in the studio when it's my own record, but like the idea of going in to produce a band and then not having the language and the like exhaustion that comes from that. I just, I just avoid it.
Well, your ears get so tired too. Like you're in the studio for like a whole day. Like I don't even want to talk to people when I come out. I'm just like, oh God, isolate me, put me somewhere like far away, where nobody can talk to me. I think on the last record I think somebody decided to take me out for a drink afterwards, and I ended up at this horrible, Little Joy. Some people might know. It's not. It used to be. It used to be. Little Joy. Yeah. Used to be kind of like a little hole in the wall. Now they're like trying to fancy themselves up a little. But back then,
is it the place in Echo Park?
Yeah. That's where I
used to live like 2 blocks from there.
Yeah,
that's where I used to live.
Yeah. And so I remember coming out of the studio, and I was working with Alex Newport at that time. Mm-hmm. And I came out and he's like, yeah, you guys should go over to Little Joy, hang out. I remember walking in there and there was the speaker had a broken cone. So all you could hear was
God.
through like the whole, and I was like, oh my God. I have to run. I have to get out of here. I think I have to, I'm just going to walk home. I'm going to walk home. Okay.
What's interesting is that like, I think that's what's been so, I always have associated so much like of my time making music with exhaustion and grief and stress and that power struggle of like feeling like, no, you're right. I don't know the name of every single microphone that has ever been fucking created, but I also know what sounds good and what doesn't, with like, that, like with having all the power, right? Like I always have worked with really amazing people, but like, but then the last 2 records that we made working with Greg Kirsten, it was like, there's just so much less focus on the gear and so much less time in the studio. Like he's just like, there's only 5 or 6 productive hours in the day. So that's how long we'll work every day. And I remember feeling like terrorized by that idea as we like got closer to the date. But I definitely have started to lose some of the trauma associated with making music, because I've realized like, there is only kind of a certain amount of productive hours in the day. The rest of it is sort of spent finding work in the studio and just becoming exhausted,
Sure.
Yeah.
I did this with your sister too. It must be a twin thing.
What is it?
Where I just stopped talking all of a sudden.
I love it.
And we And we went blank. We're pausing. We're breathing.
Yeah. I like it. We're breathing. I date someone who takes pauses, and I'm learning how to like let there be air. I don't always have to talk. I'm comfortable.
Yeah. I went through that myself, cause I'm pretty chatty patty.
How's it working? Yeah. How's it working?
It's perfect. I've been, my last 2 relationships, I think I levitated to somebody who is obviously the exact opposite of me. And so I think it helps me be a better person. Because
you feel more balanced.
She is so very different, and she does help me, slow down and take a breath.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's good.
So anyway, so I was thinking about, Sarah started talking about that. She thought maybe there were 2 tapes floating around from this Fisher-Price cassette player.
Interesting.
Do you have that same memory?
My recollection is there's one, and it's lost.
Oh, okay. So no bootlegs for the fans.
No, I mean, like there's that tiny piece of tape at the top and the bottom end of the first record we ever made. Underfeel Like Ours starts with, which was our first record, which we made in 1999. It opens with a few moments from one of the from that Fisher-Price tape that I recall, and then it ends with it as well, where you hear one of us famously saying like, "No, it's my tape recorder," and arguing with each other. But my mom claims that she doesn't know where it is. I mean, like, who knows? I mean, I'm sure it's probably somewhere in all of our belongings. At some point, we'll probably find it, but it is on record. I mean, it's on the record. So, I mean, we have a piece of it, but it wasn't a long tape, to be honest. I mean, there was only about maybe 4 minutes or something of us talking. We're reading a story and we sing a song, and my mom and dad are on it. And that's what I remember.
Do you feel like when you guys are doing songwriting, do you both, I'm only guessing on the outside looking in, do you ever come up with an idea that maybe Sarah's not totally into, yet somehow you might bend the way you're feeling to go along with it? Or do you think that there is definitely like a sibling competitive nature about it, about your processes?
Well, the competitive nature part of it, like it's hard because when people used to ask about like sibling rivalry or competitiveness, I was really quick to be like, oh, we don't have that. But of course we do, like any siblings. But
yeah, sure.
But in terms of music, like anything that Sarah sends, I'm excited by. I mean, anything she creates is like, I mean, I'm her number one fan. It's like exciting to me when she sends me something. It's crazy what we can do. And I don't mean us, like, I just mean like artists, like the fact that we're able to make a song, and especially in the early days of our career and before that in high school. I mean, like I found it fascinating. I was like, holy shit. We just like, you sit down, it's like, and you channel from somewhere, and all of a sudden, like, it's like, whether it's an hour or it's 10 hours, but something comes out of that, and it's really crazy. So for me, I never hear Sarah's music and write back that I don't think it's good. I never write it or never hear it and then think I've got to beat her and write something better. But like, I definitely, if I hear something and I think it can be made better, I will suggest ways I think that it can be reinforced to be stronger or more interesting. And I definitely feel like she does that to me. What's really interesting to me is that when we became professional musicians and we started to record ourselves, like, and I'm sure Sarah talked about this, like, we got a Mac Tower and a Pro Tools rig, and we started recording ourselves in 2002. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because all of our music from that point on, so like, well, from the time we started writing music when we were like 14 or 15 until 2006, so we're talking about a really long stretch of time, was all written on the guitar. And it was only until it was only in 2006 that we started to write, like I wrote Are You 10 years ago for the con on, like, I wrote it in GarageBand. I just used piano samples or piano and then samples of drums and whatever to concoct this sort of like mixture and then sent it to Sarah. So like everything before that had been written on guitar. And I was so delicate with Sarah when she would send me music. And I felt she was very delicate with me. I mean, we still edited each other and made suggestions, but it's interesting that when we moved into the digital world, we still were on organic instruments. I still used like tambourine and shaker and a snare drum in my living room and guitars and vocals. And there was a delicate way that we expressed ourselves and edited each other and produced each other and shared demos. But it was interesting because in 2006, 2007, when we moved to writing more and using samples and keyboards and synths and programming, our way of exchanging feedback really changed, and it became a little less emotional and a little less friendly. Like it became like, if I sent Sarah a song and she didn't like it, she would just be like, yeah, not for me. Or it's not your strongest work, you know? And it's interesting because I wonder if like the organic nature of writing on a guitar in the earlier like 10 years of our career, if it sort of like insisted on a more delicate exchange between us. And then as we got more into gear and more into the box and working in the box, we've become less emotional about the way each other writes. I haven't really like said that out loud before, but I wonder if, like, I've been thinking, like, I write a lot lately and I don't send it to Sarah because I've been dreaming up ways to send her music differently. Like, should I, should I put it all on CD and then go buy her a CD player? Because I know she doesn't have one, so she can listen to it. Like, it's like, how do I change the way she listens to even what I sent her? You know, living in an era where people just put music on as like background. How do I get her not to hear me the same as she has before? You know.
Well, I think with the two of you, I mean, all the sibling stuff aside, I'm sure you guys hear a lot of that. And I don't want to be in that group.
No, it's fine. Great.
But, I think you guys have a real magic. I think obviously it's probably the gazillionth time you've heard that, but I think also we forget about like how sensitive the relationship is between us as songwriters and the people who are writing those songs with us, or even as you said, we're writing it separately and then we're presenting it to them. And I don't delve too much in the digital age. I feel like I got to get there. I'm still like an analog head. So
yeah.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can teach an old horse new tricks. But
of course you can. Of course you can. I'll come help you.
But I do love Moogs, and I played with a gal named Laura McFarlane for quite a few years. Mm-hmm. And she taught me how to play like marimba and vibraphone and like all these, great instruments.
That's so cool.
And we were very sensitive to each other. And when I met Laura, it was at a very pivotal time for me as a musician as well, because I was just like, where do I, it's like Riot Girl was blowing up and everybody hated it. And contrary to all the books that are about Riot Girl and everything that was going on, I can tell you that story is slightly different than the way it actually went down.
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
But, I felt like at that point in time, I needed somebody that had like a sensitivity to me, and that it wasn't just like, Rhonda, do this, Rhonda, and it really does create a difference. You feel it naturally in the music, and it is something that you just long to do. And, we're telling these stories that sometimes are super, super close to us in a sense that you're unnerved a little bit to even, let it all out there. And I find it very hard sometimes to perform with somebody that I've never met before, and I think there's some musicians out there that, and your sister spoke about this a little bit as well. And in regards to, being able to just, play with anybody or come from this background. Like, I went to Berklee School of Music, and like, I know everything about diminished and 16ths and 18ths and blah, blah, blah. And like, I just came from this very traditional musical background, you know, that I don't think that story wasn't there for all of us, you know, and it was more about like finding our voice and trusting somebody enough to believe in us, to pick up on our uniqueness and to lift us up and say, these are your strengths. These aren't weaknesses, you know? And I think
and I think Sarah and I are lucky because we got to take comfort in the fact that, like, even though we'd had classical musical training in piano, that once we expressed an interest in learning the guitar and songwriting, I mean, not even expressed it, just did it. We took comfort in that neither of us were interested in learning anything about the guitar.
Sure.
I took one lesson and was like, nope, not for me. And I don't think a lot of people, I'll say people, but I do mean women, but like, I don't think a lot of people get into a situation where they get to the level we're at, where you have to hire a crew of band and producers and all these different people and feel totally confident about their lack of knowledge. But I think because there's two of us, I don't feel that uncomfortable about the fact that I don't know all the theory. What has prevented me in 20 years of being a professional musician from learning like more about the guitar? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not entirely sure. Like, I'm intrigued right in this moment because we're talking. I'll probably forget by the time I eat dinner. But like, I'm like, what does prevent me from not learning a little bit more? So that when I get into a room full of professional musicians, I mean, my drummer sometimes knows more about the guitar than I know, but I know how to write a great song. And I know how to connect to an audience, you know, and I know how to market myself, and I know how to collaborate with Sarah, and I know how to craft words and music that's connected. And I know that because I've done it, and I just did it. I just did it. No one taught me how to do it. I just figured it out. And yet there's part of me that's like, what stops me? I literally have hours a day sometimes where I'm like, what should I do right now? I have literally nothing to do. Probably 2 hours of Googling some stuff, watch a few tutorials on the internet, and I would know more about the guitar than I've learned in 20 years. And I don't know, it's like a barrier. I don't know if it is just part of me that absolutely is doing it just to be an asshole. Like, and not an asshole to anyone in particular. Like, I just am like, no, I don't want to know more. I don't want to go in the room. I don't have to prove myself. I don't want to go into a situation where they're like, sorry, is that a C7 with a whatever? I like that. I go, I have no idea.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
Is it? Like some part of me, and I'm like, am I a dick? Or is it like,
no,
because I could learn it. I mean, obviously I'm capable, but like, I don't know what prevents me. And maybe, again, this is a long-winded way of looping back to say, but maybe it is because I'm not a musician. I'm a songwriter.
Sure.
I'm a storyteller. And I believe that anything I learn may inhibit the ability for me to just go into it and be the conduit. I believe I'm pulling this song, this music, this melodies, this lyrics, this energy from somewhere, and everything I learn about it maybe will prevent me from just doing it naturally.
Right. No, I totally get it. That it makes a lot of sense to me, and hopefully to some of our listeners as well.
Yeah. Your listeners are like, what an asshole. Just learn the names of the chords, idiot.
I'll tell you what, listeners out there, people who rely on theory too much waste a lot of time.
Right. Right.
Because I always used to say I had the cutest little drummer for a while. You know, he wasn't even old enough. We'd sneak him into the pubs, you know, to play and this and that. And he just loved his theory. He'd be like, well, Rhonda, you know, in that time signature of blah, 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 blah. And
no.
Just tell me over and over. And he'd want to get up on the whiteboard and start writing. And I'd say, you know what? Within the time that we've talked about this, we could probably play it 3 or 4 times and just hear naturally what sounds best. We don't really need to, we don't need to deconstruct it so much. And I think that I'm with you. I've always been even if I love a riff and I write a riff and I'm like, this is great. If a song does not flow naturally out of that riff, I'm like, get rid of it. You know, like, Because which I'll say, like, is I think that's a superpower. Like, I think that's really amazing. Like, I hear you talk about that. Like, I think that the ability to know, like, the fact that, like, you know, you can, like, you
know so much, but then you can also tell the difference and be like
Sure.
it's either good or it's not. It's either going to produce an emotion in other people or it's not. Well, and it ends up being about like, what are you creating and why are you creating it? No matter how much I could fill my office that I use as my studio with gear, but if there is not a story to be told, it doesn't matter how much fucking shit you shove in here, and it doesn't matter how much theory or technical knowledge I have, I'm not going to write something that's going to move people.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, that's the whole thing. You can't put a square peg in a circle. As you know,
yeah.
it's kind of like, if it's going to move you, and the only way that you're going to move other people is to be slightly moved yourself. So,
yeah.
Hopefully. So now I feel like we're both jockeying for like the microphone here. Totally joking.
Yeah. I mean,
that was my joke.
Okay.
Haha.
Okay, good. Yeah, like I'm pressing pause. Like I'm going to just pause for commercials, and then Home Improvement will be back with more Rhonda and Tegan.
That would be awesome. Maybe we should feed that in here somehow.
I know.
So awesome.
No, I feel like half the time when I'm being asked questions, especially by accomplished, awesome, amazing, probably more knowledgeable people than me, I think to myself, my God, why do I even get to speak? I should be asking you questions.
I feel that way about a lot of people. There are so many beautiful people out there in the world, but God knows there's some crazies out there too. And we all got to stay safe. So,
you do.
You like that? That's my message.
Yeah, I do. I like that. I like it.
It's a security message for everybody out there.
Yeah.
So, do you feel as though, and I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, Tegan, but do you feel as though, I do believe Sarah used that you guys riff off of each other a lot of riffing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like when you're starting that story writing process, do you feel like something comes from that, or do you knuckle down yourself and write your story and then bring it?
Yeah, I'd say like most of the time, I write most of the time, anything that gets heard by any other people besides me it comes from that process of just sitting down and having, I mean, I don't know if this might make sense to you, but it's like an itch, right? Like I'm itchy to write something. I need to like sit down and scratch this. So like I'll like write, I'll mess around on the guitar. If nothing comes after a little bit, I'll sit down on the piano. I'll start messing around with beats, like whatever it is. I'll just kind of like, it's super cheesy to say, but like kind of mixologist style, like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then I start to layer things, and then usually melody and lyrics come after I finally have some sort of structure to work them into. And then I kind of just have to fight the urge not to send it to Sarah, like, cause I work really quickly. And so then I have this desire to be heard. So then I want to share it. And, and Sarah really tinkers a lot. So, but yeah, no, the foundation of like, I'd say like most of the music that we both create is created, or that foundation is developed, individually. And then we share with one another. And then I do believe that a conversation happens musically though. Like I think I send something to Sarah, and then, once we're into the groove of writing, then she'll send me a song. And then based on what I hear, I may go back and tinker with something I've heard to kind of make it more in line with what she's doing, or I'll just be like, okay, now I need another song. Like I'll get inspired by something that she's doing, and I'll try to create something that's, in line with that, or is moving in that direction, which is going back to why like I'm always like a little bit like gun shy to agree to the language of like sibling rivalry or competition, because I don't feel like I'm trying to be better than Sarah. I'm trying to meet the level she's at. So when she's doing something that's amazing, I'm not like, damn it, I'm not envious of Sarah. I just think I need to be as good as her. I need to work as hard as her. I need to try harder. I need to change these words. She's saying something new and different. Where did she get those sounds from? How did she figure that out? Then I'll just go to work and do it.
Sure. And I immediately, when you girls air on Dear Gear, it's going to be my lead sister month. I start to think about, the first sister duo that I fell in love with, which was Ann and Nancy Wilson. I think
of course.
Yeah. I mean, when I was young, give me a hairbrush and a heart song, I was ready to go.
Totally.
And
that's me still, by the way.
Oh yeah. It's almost Friday. So, I'm
yeah.
I've got a hairbrush in my back pocket. Not really. But yeah, I think about Ann and Nancy in particular, and the amount of time that they've been together, and the amount of albums that they've created, and the amount of touring that they've done together. And I went and saw them not that long ago. They're doing the casino circuit nowadays, which was kind of
really well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Hey, hell yeah. I ain't knocking it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, totally. I mean, look, I'm like, when do we get to the casino era?
I can't wait to see you guys. It's like from Coachella billboards to like all of a sudden you're like Agua Caliente, Tegan and Sarah. I can't wait.
Bring it on, man. Bring it on.
Hells yes. Well, my family live in Rancho Mirage, so I'll be there, girl.
Great. Excellent. Yeah. Excellent.
No, but so I love that. We're just running amok here. I think, they still care about like everything that they do together so very much. And they're so gentle with each other, even on stage when they talk about each other. And it must just be so wonderful. Like, I mean, I think Anne is like, she's well into her 60s now. And, here's a funny question. Do you think you and Sarah will always be this way because of the magic and of the relationship? And, this is feeding into all the things we've discussed, the importance of being the opposite of one another, all of these things we've pulled in, I mean, it would be horrible or hard, I would think, for either of you to step away from that in any sense, but do you guys ever talk about things like that, or it's just like day by day?
Yeah. No. I mean, we're planners, we're Virgos, and we're planners, and this is what we know. We definitely, I mean, like, firstly, like, I mean, I do hope that as we grow older, we continue to grow more compassionate to one another. I don't know that that's always been our strength. And I definitely think as we get older and, life catches up with you and mortality and all the rest of it, I hope that we're becoming more generous and thoughtful to one another. We've certainly had we've spoken like extensively publicly about some of the difficulties, because we're not just siblings, we're twins. We shared everything, literally our whole lives. And so that desire to be independent and autonomous is sometimes it's a battle, but I think we've gotten to a pretty good place, and I hope we continue to be that way. And I hope as we get older that level of compassion is visible. I do believe there's a lot of compassion and respect for one another, but I do hope as we get older, it's more visible, because a lot of people just see the banter and they're like, oh, you guys like really pick on each other. And I'm like, oh, do we? God, I mean, I think we're always just trying to elevate the show and the story, but I do have a deep respect for Sarah. And I think in terms of like what our future holds, we definitely do think about it. I mean, I think we both agree on a lot of things, and then some things we don't. But like one thing we agree on is that we want to keep making music. We want to keep Tegan and Sarah alive. I think the only way to do that is to like be compassionate, to be loving, to be understanding, but also to diversify and to try new things. Sarah's publicly talked a lot about not being interested in guitars anymore, for example. And I really respect that. I really I treasure that Sarah wants to challenge herself, that she wants to return to our roots as piano players and classically trained musicians, and that she wants to enrich that part of her life. I love that Sarah wants to tell new stories and try new ways to tell those stories. And I think for me that creates a balance. I think that positive and negative sort of ion charge is what keeps Tegan and Sarah fresh and interesting and relatable and relevant still 20 years into our career. And I also think that it's going to be about being creative in other ways, but together. Like, we're currently working on a podcast and a book, and we have this foundation. And I think for Sarah and I, similar to a marriage, actually. We have to be able to appreciate each other from a distance and see each other thrive in other areas. I think I need to know that Sarah she can stand on her own, but also to like let her know that she can stand on her own. She does not need me, that this is still a choice that she is here, because Sarah could go and be a musician and run a business and thrive without me. And I know that she wants me to know that I could do that too. So I think a lot of our creative endeavors, including songwriting and Tegan and Sarah, is still about pushing each other to be independent of one another and say, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm good at. This is how I see myself, and be acknowledged and supported. And I think that's what keeps us alive. So I hope we're lucky enough to be playing the casino circuit and making records and being compassionate, in our 60s. And I think in order to do that, it's like, I hope we're on the right track for that,
Sure. I think so. I mean, obviously you are both very smart women, and you both support each other, and you both talk about each other in a manner and a level of respect that will endure this lifetime and beyond. So, that's all you can hope for. And to have that magic and to know that it's also so much a part of you, as you said, as a twin, like that you've shared so many things together. I think, and as you do get older, you do become more in touch with those things even more and more, and those things become more and more and more important to you as time goes on.
Yeah.
And I'm totally looking forward to the Agua Caliente gig. We'll have a little pool party. We'll get some blown up swans, whatever.
That sounds awesome. Count me in.
Perfect. Yeah. So again, thank you so much.
Honored to be included, and thank you so much for your time too. And thank you for doing this podcast. And it was a really delightful conversation. So thanks for including me.
No worries. All right, Tegan, you have a great night. Take care.
Okay. You too. Bye.
All right. Bye. Dear Gear would like to thank all of its listeners for tuning in each week. Once again, we are proving that this podcast is more of a social experiment of musicians navigating their sound and stories through grief, stress, happiness, and sometimes being your sister's #1 fan. Again, take care of one another, and see you next week.
Yeah, talk like that. So when you're 18 and you're listening to this, you can hear what a brat you were.